Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dream Big podcast with Bob Goff and friends. This is your host, Scott Schimmel, and I wish I could say I was with Bob, but we're both stuck indoors at our houses.
But we are together in spirit, and if you are listening, we're together with you. And think of this, so you could be very close to somebody. They don't have to wear a face mask when you're listening to this podcast. We're speaking into your ear. And today we get to hear from Rachel and Dave Hollis, who are terrific people. If you haven't heard of them, so talented and gifted, you're in for a treat.
Yeah, and speaking of being stuck, sometimes I can easily feel stuck in a season of my life where I'm trying to figure out what to do next, how to get some clarity on a big dream and realign my life to that dream. And Rachel and Dave are just a beautiful example of what it looks like to do that in the midst of work and life and family.
Yeah, they're navigating the same things that you and I and everyone listening are. Some of you are in the workplace, and so hearing from some clarion voices about how they've pursued their ambitions in starting companies, running them, expanding them, but then also raising at the same time a family and wanting beautiful, vibrant things in the lives of their kids. And so Maria and I don't think of being empty nesters now. We think we have a bigger nest. And it's just all the kids and all the people that they love. And so for you, as you're listening in today, I hope that this will be a message that will land with you and you'll hear a lot about some hope.
So listen up to Bob's conversation with Rachel and Dave Hollis.
So today we have Rachel and Dave Hollis with us, and I am so glad that you guys are taking some time to talk to us. Welcome.
Man, thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to hang out with you.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm looking at you here on Zoom, and I see a bookcase behind you filled with books. And for those of you, the three people that haven't heard of Rachel and Dave so far, they are prolific writers, but more than that, they're just engaged in raising their family, trying to move the needle in people's lives. So can you introduce yourself in a little bit for those that haven't heard of you? What have you been spending your time doing, Rachel and Dave?
So I actually... The most sort of relevant piece of my past for this is I started as a lifestyle blogger about 10 years ago. So I've been an entrepreneur I'm going on my 17th year, and I started blogging as a way to promote my company at the time. And in this opportunity to communicate with women every single day through a blog, and back then, by the way, was sort of the heyday of having a blog, I learned how to tell stories, how to teach using my own life as kind of the example that I was giving, and that led very slowly through a lot of twists and turns to the work that I do today, which is teaching people, I hope, how to reach for more in their lives, how to do the work to get healthy, to get strong. And when I say healthy, I mean emotionally, spiritually, to be stronger for yourself so that you can be stronger for your family. So I started out on this journey, and then the big guy joined me a couple years ago.
Yep, I had a very conventional, traditional entertainment job for 20 plus years across a few different companies. And then, 3-4 years ago, we started talking about, hey, what would it mean for us to go do this work together? And then 2 years ago, here in June, we made a big jump, moved our family from where we lived in Los Angeles to where we now live in Austin, Texas, joined forces, did the craziest and best thing that we've ever done, worked together, and are now trying to, in creating the tools that we're creating, help as many people as we possibly can.
You know what I like the most, and I think the people that listen to this podcast dial into, is people that are trying to pursue their ambitions, because we all have them. A couple of the things that we thought were important to us, as we start digging a little bit deeper and understand why they were important to us, then we start saying they were important for the wrong reasons. So they were ambitions, but they were kind of, let's just call those a lower level ambition. But one of your ambitions, I've gathered, is to just love one another and love your family. And instead of picking your career and then backfilling your life, what I've seen is that you picked your life and then started backfilling your career, still staying at a high level with both of us. But tell us about that journey for you.
Well, I think it's fair to say that is the life that we live today, but that's not the life we lived 5 years ago. I think both of us probably were pursuing a lot of things in our lives in a way that was ego driven. We lived in Los Angeles. Dave had a very high profile career, and we really thought we were cool. We really thought we were cool, and we, I think, tried really hard to have friendships and sort of fit into the right crowds and look a certain way and dress a certain way, and were incredibly unfulfilled. And I don't even think that we had the emotional maturity to understand why we were so unfulfilled at the time. But we knew that the things that we were chasing down weren't really making us feel better and wasn't kind of giving us the life that we wanted. I started to have really bad, debilitating anxiety attacks. And I had a company at the time. I had 5 employees. And so a big part of my anxiety was wrapped up in this need to perform and to sort of be a certain way, and also really wanted the world outside to approve of me. And started doing a lot of work for the first time in my life, really started trying to understand how to handle my anxiety and my emotional instability in healthier ways. So I started going to therapy. I took up running. I really went on this journey to get healthy. And in doing so, I had this epiphany, and it sounds so silly right now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, you can change yourself. So as an entrepreneur, I had always pursued the tools to change my business, to scale, to make more money, but it never occurred to me that I could apply that to my life. And when I started doing that, it just opened up this whole door to make us honestly question everything.
Oh, that's so good. I'm really glad, because if you're driving and listening to this podcast, then pull over to the side of the road and you can make a list to say, so you know it's time for a change when, like a big indicator would be a panic attack. A panic attack, as it's been described to me, it feels like somebody's like waterboarding you and putting a lightning rod through your heart at the same time. And you're afraid you might live, and you're afraid you might die, and you're just, so that would be a big indicator. But oftentimes it comes a little bit more subtly. It's a dissatisfaction with the things that you're able to do, and a desire to shift and say, what am I made to do? And so, Dave, for you, you were able to do many things. What was the shift for you where you say, I'm going to move from old Dave, I'm actually going to believe I'm a new creation, and then I'm going to be new Dave. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I wish it was that I just had an enlightened aha moment where I, on my own, decided to just go pursue all the things, but it was the convergence of a few different factors at one single time. I was going from 30 to 40, a very interesting threshold to cross as a man, or any human, I'm going to guess, where I started asking just a bigger set of existential, why am I on this planet? Why have I been given these gifts that I'm not having to fully exploit? And as I'm asking these questions, I happen to have the benefit of my 7-year-old son in the backyard ask me a question during a routine game of Ask Dad Anything in our hot tub, where they normally are asking, I have 3 boys, at the time they were 9, 7, and 4, very like gross and ridiculous things that young boys might ask. And here he's asked me, what are you most afraid of? And out of my mouth falls, not living up to my potential, right? He's looking for tarantulas or scorpions, and out of my mouth falls this very big existential, oh my goodness, aha kind of thing that, in now bringing it to the light, is coming up against the way that I'd been showing up in our marriage, the way that I'd been showing up as a father, where because of not being as challenged inside of my professional life, I was working at Disney at the time, things were going so well that I was not growing, and though I didn't totally appreciate it, the absence of growth was actually creating dissonance in how I felt about myself when I was by myself, because I wasn't fulfilled, I couldn't figure out why, and now I had some answer. Oh, I've got these gifts that I don't have to use to sell these big movies to movie theaters. I need to go pursue something so that I don't live into my greatest fear of not living up to my potential. And so this conversation that we'd been having in the background is now something that gets brought to the foreground of, hey, in the midst of you not showing up as well as you'd like, in the midst of you having this moment where you recognize you're not living into your potential, we could go pursue these things together. Maybe we could create a little more consistency in who you'd hope to be by actually having you have to do things that push you outside of your comfort zone, that challenge and test the capacity you have to do hard things, and that maybe tap into more of the gifts that God's put inside of your being.
Yeah, so Earth took the sock drawer and threw it on the floor in the spring of 2020. And now you're
So
trying to
real.
match all the socks, and you're just saying what goes with what anymore. And so this, I hope, for all of us isn't in a time that we're just ricocheting off the walls, but we're just saying, hey, what matches who I am now? I know all the things I've gotten some validation for, and that's like a super good thing in the right context, to get some validation to say, actually, you're really good at relationships or people or writing or whatever. But if you get all your validations from your job, it's terrific if you're a sword swallower. But if you get all of your validation and then get the hiccups, then you're just not a good sword swallower. And then you have this crisis to say, like, well, what am I then? And so for me, I just think of faith kinds of things. For some of you listening, faith is a big deal. For others of you, not so much. But just say, like, who am I? Like, whose am I? What does this fit in? Who do I really love? And who loves me without an agenda? And I bet the two of you saying, I'm going to leave behind, there's something cathartic about packing your boxes and moving, and you do get this do-over. What did you learn in the process?
Well, I do want to say, because I want to be really authentic in the conversation and say that for both of us, the real change in our life came as the result of, we had very strong leverage. So I was having this terrible anxiety, and Dave, and he writes about this in the book, and we've talked about this a lot on our podcast, Dave was really struggling with work, was struggling with checking out. Our marriage was in trouble. Those things were the catalyst and the leverage that we needed for change. And I think what's really beautiful about the season that we're in with quarantine and the virus, because I really am a person who looks for good and looks for how can this be for me in everything that we face. I think the beauty in this season is that this is and can be a catalyst for so many of you who are listening to make the change that you know you've needed to make. Like, you know, like things that were not already good coming into what just happened was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so you can look at this situation, like you said, you know, the sock drawer's been thrown, all the socks are on the floor, and you're trying to match them up again. Or you could decide in real time that you don't wear socks anymore. You just became a flip-flop kind of gal. Like, that's what you could decide this season means for you. But it really does, I think, if you want to make true change, you have to have leverage that you can't come back from.
I'll say, too, I went through this very interesting exercise at the beginning of this year where I had this massive proclamation, 2020 is going to be my best year ever. And here we are in the midst of quarantine, in the midst of scary times, and I am still here proclaiming that 2020 is going to be my best year ever. But at the beginning of the year, as I make this decision that I'm going to make this happen, in sitting separately from our lives and our technology and everything else, got clear for a second, and in that trying to map out what it would take to make this year come together that way, wanted to start by understanding where I'd gotten in my way over the course of the last handful of years when it came to pain. And one thing for me that was really apparent, there was a consistent variable every time I experienced pain in the last 3 to 5 years. And that was this person that I suggested I wanted to be, that I knew God created me to be, that I had promised Rachel I might be, or that my kids deserved, and who I knew myself to be when I put myself to sleep at night, was disconnected. There was dissonance between who I knew I could be and who I knew myself to be. And that space was shame, was regret, was underfulfilled potential, was, me not fully showing up for myself. And so now, more than ever in quarantine, but now, I have to ask myself, if I want to have an exceptional relationship, then what do I need to do? If I want to be a present father, then what do I need to do? And I would argue for anyone who's listening who right now is feeling overwhelmed by the circumstance that we find ourselves in, or felt overwhelmed by life prior to these circumstances, the more you can create alignment between who you'd hope to show up as and who you believe yourself to be when you're by yourself, how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. My goodness, that has been for me the most important and most motivating thing. Yep, it took a massive amount of leverage to start the journey, but creating that consistency between who I want to be and who I know I can be, that is the thing that keeps me going on the days when it gets hard.
Really well said. I'm thinking about the difference between working on our character and working on our career. Like, tell me about the character attributes you want to see in your marriage. Like, I want authenticity in the relationship. It's easy if you're a pretty upbeat person, and I think the three of us are, to talk about the person you hope to be someday, and then to bring it back into real time. And it's not like you're trying to be deceptive, but you're actually being deceptive. I'm talking about the Bob I wish I was rather than the Bob I actually am right now and striving. And so what I ended up doing is kind of calling BS on that by clapping my hands every time I would be speaking to somebody. And I would talk about the guy I wish I was rather than the guy I am. I like clap my hands. It's like I was giving myself a standing ovation because I want to clap less. I want to get more real about the guy I am and then talk about the person I'm trying to be and I'm endeavoring to be. And I don't think God gives us all these steps. I think what we get is a direction, and the direction is always towards more authenticity with one another, with Him. Well, part of this, we have spent some time with the people on the podcast talking about these, like a framework of ideas, like find an ambition, look for an opportunity, take action, expect there'll be some setbacks. And then this one I want to touch on with you is sustained belief. So sustaining belief is to say, like, how do you hang in there during this time? Because this time that we're in a little bit of lockdown, not just physically, but this might be a representative of some kind of emotional lockdown that we've been in for a long time. How can we sustain belief in that? What's that hope for what's in the future? And how did that work for the two of you? You had an idea. I know it ended up in Austin, but it was saying, we're going to exchange the life we've had and we've experienced, some of the successes we've had and some of the setbacks, but we have in mind this life that we could have. Tell us about that.
So I have always, I don't know how this sounds, so I'll just say it. In our friend circle, we do a lot of like dreaming and vision casting together. It's one of our favorite things to do every time we get together with our group of friends. And these are people that we see maybe once a quarter because we live in different states. And at the beginning of this year, we were doing this and we gave everyone a name. Like, we sort of told everybody these are your attributes. This is who you are to us. And the name that my friends gave me was Wayfinder, because I can just see it. I can see so clearly where we should go, meaning in business. Like, I can see the book that needs to be written. And I think that's because I am so close to the community of people that I serve that I have a really good handle on kind of seeing what she's going to need next. And so for me, so much of the vision for what we are building or doing, even in leading our family to Austin, Texas, was about what I knew the business could be. So the business has always been my dream and has always been the sort of North Star that kind of led us forward. And even coming to Austin was about, we wanted to change our lives, but more than anything, we wanted to scale our company. And scaling the company in Los Angeles is much more expensive than scaling it in Texas. So that's one thing, was just like, I really would encourage you, if you're listening, to let your dreams run wild. I do a lot of journaling. I really encourage people to see their dreams like a movie playing in their mind. Make it specific, make it close to you, be as detailed as you can, because that vision is what I will always go back to over and over again on the hard days. We have 4 children. Our youngest is adopted, and the adoption process for her was 5 years long. And during during the hardest parts of our adoption process, there was a song that we just like held to, which was Oceans by Hillsong. And there's a line in it that says, I keep my eyes above the waves. And I feel like dreaming and holding on to that vision and holding on to imagination is you fighting for the ability to keep your eyes above the waves. And right now in the season that we're in with quarantine, you have to fight to keep your eyes on the horizon, to keep your eyes on where you know you need to go, what you need to do to be strong for your family. Because if you get bogged down in the fear and the anxiety and the uncertainty, you will drown.
I am not wired like her. I'm just going to say it. And part of where I think like her superpowers and my superpowers come together like the Avengers is the difference that exists in us, right? Like I am measuring the waves. I am calculating the speed that is necessary to crest over them and not be swallowed by them. But here's the headline. Like right now, in a world where my pragmatic integrator operator mindset works really well for the business she's now cast a vision for the what, and I've come in with some conversation around the how, right? You pair the what and the how together, look out, pour gas on it, we're good to go. When it comes to processing anxiety or fear or the things of uncertainty that live inside of quarantine, I have to really depend on my routines. I have to like double and triple down on the things that I know engineer me having the kind of day I want to have, irrespective of what life, the world, the like voice in my head ends up throwing my way on this a Wednesday or next Wednesday, because I can only truly control what happens today and how I try to show up for it today. And so I try to kind of train my pragmatism to what does it take at this time of day to set me up for being great at 2 p.m., at 8 p.m., at whatever it might be, because those are the things I can control. I'm truly trying to train my focus on the things I can control, which is so few things.
I love that there's two different models there of ambition and how to direct your next steps forward. And so if you're listening, the beautiful thing is you've got a third model. I mean, there's 37 miracles that were done in the Bible, and I've just got to believe that we are the 38th. And the miracle might be that we'd get our act together, that we'd be authentic enough to deal with it. I've taken a boat back and forth to Hawaii a couple of times. Not sure why, because I get really seasick, but it's just like the adventure. And one time we hit this monster storm. The waves were 30 feet tall and breaking. And what you need to do, and it would make sense, is that you need to steer into the waves, not away from the waves. Because if you get sideways to a wave, you've got a real problem. And so I had gone down below to, hurl or something, and somebody else was at the helm. They saw this big wave. They steered away from the wave. The wave broke on the boat, and we were sliding down the face of this huge wave. We took on so much water. Here's the point. What you want to do in difficult times sometimes is steer away from the wave. And I think what all three of us are saying, which you're probably nodding in agreement with this, is to steer into the wave. But you need to understand the wave to steer into the wave. You can't fix it if you can't see it, if you don't have the guts to take it on. And that may mean a change. It might mean moving to Austin. It might be moving a little bit deeper into the relationships you already have with your kids, with the person you said I do to, the person that you just love a lot, that you're with constantly. And that's the kind of guts and grit that I think it takes to get more and more real. I mean, that was Pinocchio. He just wanted to get real, and he had a nose that grew. I just clap my hands. It's less awkward, but it's just awkward enough to just call myself on that, to say what we need and what everybody desires, and what really God wants for each of us is that we would be more authentic. So thank you guys for being authentic in what you're doing, for leading with love. If people want to connect with you, what are a couple of the ways they can find you? You have a podcast, Rise, that's out there. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have, both Dave and I are really active on social. That's our best way of serving our community. We have our podcast together. But if you want to know more, thehollisco.com is where you can find out all the things that we're up to.
And then there are a couple books out there. What's the name of your new book? Get Out of Your Own Way.
Get Out of Your Own Way. That is my book. It's just come out, and it is all about the times when I absolutely 100% got in my own way, and the things in shining some light on some lies that I was believing made them unbelievable in an attempt to keep myself out of my own way. I think the stories are super relatable, and as you relate, hopefully it provides you some breadcrumbs, tips, tricks, hacks to keep yourself out of your own way as well. And obviously, Rachel, the most prolific Hollis writer on this podcast today, has many, many great books, among them Girl Wash Your Face and Girl Stop Apologizing.
I think what I want you to do if you're listening to this is if you've wanted to write before, don't just talk about being an author. I don't think that's a word. Now it is. So just And I think Dave set it up really well. If you want a tip, just organize your thoughts around this. If you want more authenticity, just talk about something super relatable, like Dave's stories, like something that happened. Don't talk about walking out of and doing your first spacewalk from the space shuttle. Talk about walking out your front door. Something relatable, then talk about something important. It's not about going to the ends of the world with your faith. It's about going to the ends of your street. Then flip the camera angle. Don't say something predictable about that. Just say something, but I went to the end of the street and you know what happened? They rejected me. Do you know who lived 2 doors down from me was Barry White? Remember the Hey Baby Baby guy?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have an Easter party every year, and the Easter Bunny arrives by boat in a full suit, and nobody can ever know who the Easter Bunny is, but it's the big deal. Like if you got tapped by me to be the Easter Bunny, that's like the big deal. And we put thousands of eggs out, and all the neighborhood kids run out and collect them. Well, I asked Barry White if he would be the Easter Bunny, and he said no. I'm like, oh my gosh, in 20 years, nobody's ever said no. Tragically, he was dead within 6 months. Nobody has ever said no to being the Easter Bunny since then. Here's the point.
Yes.
You're going to get a little rejection along the way. Just remember, you are the sage. That's why Rachel and Dave's voice carry so far. They say something relatable. They talk about something important. They flip the camera angle on it. And last thing, don't resolve it. This is not a Hallmark thing with a bow on it. So whether you self-identify as an author or not, you got some words to say the world needs to hear. And so get out there and do a little authoring during this time. You got it.
It's so good. In my book, I use a quote from Robert Frost: "The only way out is through." Whether it's about the struggle we were talking about earlier or getting through the word count of a book you want to write, the only way out is through. So just start doing it. And when it feels like a slog, push through anyway. You're going to get to the other side of it. It's going to be hard.
Yes.
But like this quarantine, like anything else in life, the only way out is through.
Yeah, and if a book sounds like too much to take on at once, how about a paragraph? How about a sentence? Give me a word. Let me buy a vowel. Like
just something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, you guys. We love you. Thanks for being bright lights in the world, and for what you're doing by loving your family. And then I know with that kind of authenticity comes some distractions. And so my hope for both of you that you'll continue to lead undistracted lives. And when you are distracted, that you'll continue to have the wisdom to call it out and then let us know what you saw.
Yeah.
Right on.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Bob.
Bob.
We appreciate you so much.
Everyone has at least 1 or 2 books inside them waiting to be written. Maybe you can relate. You have a story to share, a message to deliver, something that needs to be said, but you're probably stuck like so many people who are wondering, could I be an author? How would I even go about writing in a compelling way? How do I write a book? That's why we put together a new interactive digital course called Author Class with Bob Goff. He's a best-selling author a few times over whose style of writing has inspired millions, and he's learned a lot about the book business along the way. Author Class includes teaching videos with Bob and a 7-part framework to guide you to write great content and get your book out into the world. Join the waitlist right now before the course goes live on May 12th. Click the link in the show notes to make sure you're first in line to get access to Author Class with Bob Goff. Right now, I know, Bob, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear out in the world. There's fear of getting sick, fear of being alone. I know a lot of business owners have this fear of meeting their payroll, keeping their business alive. But something that Dave said stuck out to me. He said, have a fear of not living into your own potential. And I thought that they both have such a clarity on what's really going on in life and how to have that crystal clarity about how to respond to the ambitions of your heart.
And I think that's not unusual for any of us. We had this idea in our mind. It may not have been really specific, but we had a general idea about what our life would look like, what our relationships would look like, the sense of purpose, what our purpose would be. And then some circumstances come up. And here's the deal. A change in circumstances doesn't mean a change in purpose, that we can actually have the same purposes. We just can catch up with them. And what a great reminder hearing from Dave and Rachel about what their pursuits have been and what their pursuits continue to be.
And Rachel said, be really serious to the level of change that you want. In other words, something that you share all the time, Bob, go all in. So what does that look like for you during this season of transition, this season of shutdown? Does that mean to quit the job, cut off the relationship, confront the addiction, declare the dream, launch the website, put down the deposit? Like, what does it look like for you to get really serious, the level of change that is so important to you?
Yeah, and as you're listening, you might start small. Don't feel like you need to nail this. This isn't the Olympics. You don't need to do a triple flip and land it with your arms in the air. But what you need to do is just get out a pencil and say, okay, so these are 3 steps I'm going to take today over this general purpose. If faith is a big thing for you, like it is for me, you might say, my purpose is to love God and just enjoy Him. And then the second thing is going to be to love my family. And then the third thing is to be love my friends. What I want you to do is tell me a number 4, 5, and 6. So those first 3 slots are going to be easy. I want you to dig in a little bit. And again, don't feel like you need to nail it, but I want you to be specific. Know what your purpose is, live into those, and then say, what's my next move?
So thanks for listening in. We will see you next week with another guest, Jen Hatmaker.